Okay, so we finished Eis Gimel, Eis Daled rather. We're up to Eis Hey. Good morning. So the conclusion of Eis Daled maybe we should do the questions on Eis Daled. Did we do the question? Or the terms? No. Where are they? They're there? Yeah, word mark. Go ahead, bust the gun.
Here.
Thank you. Let's do Eis Daled. The only in the on page 38, which is the by the request of Chai Rezel, we should do the psukim of Mamar Azal.
Thanks.
So page 38, we have one which is number 5. It says in Chumash, the Yidden said, let's go back to Egypt. Over there we had food for free. The simple meaning is they were slaves to Mitzrayim, so they provided them with food. And here they're in the desert and they're afraid that they were going to starve to death. What the deeper meaning is, anyone remember? That in Mitzrayim, it's chinam, you don't need to work. Work means basically bittul. Every form of work is an expression of bittul, is giving of myself. And the rest belong to the next. Oh, this is somebody's, I don't know whose. Maybe yours?
There's another,
Okay,
2 other options.
okay. Well, understand we have options. This one is also somebody's.
It could be old, like, movie series maybe?
Can't be old because this is the new production, especially the yellow paper. Okay, I have one which is clean. So now we'll go to the Hasidic terms and phrases. So we're on page 40. These are the terms and phrases that come out of Daled. It starts with number 7. No, number 6 probably, but 6 is simple. Bali Bchira. That means, right, we have those who have free choice. Bittul is bittul. Number 8, this is a quote from the Zohar. If you want to know the exact translation, merely you have it in the English, but Ruach Misava, the spirit of impurity. Ruach means spirit. Misava means impurity. Is Damin Tadir, is found all the time. B'margona, in things that are free, uberekana, things that are empty. So basically, if you want to become a nothing, you don't have to work too hard. Anything that you want to have that has substance to it requires effort, requires work. And generally, the difference between Kedusha and Klippa is, like it says, this is bittul and this is without bittul. Number 9, unikas asitra achra, very common term. It means the sitra achra, nurturing from Kedusha. That's usually when this term is used. That how could Klippa get chayes from Kedusha? Only from Makiv. That's number 10. Makiv means a light of Hashem that's infinite, that's above Hishtalshlus, above the world. Really, I should stop here for a moment and explain. The truth of the matter is, in reference to the question is, how does Klippa get chayes? First, I just want to explain the question. The question is, Dafka al pi chassidus. Without chassidus, generally speaking, the way people look at it is that there's Kedusha, there's Klippa, and Klippa is something which is not Kedusha, almost like this has nothing to do with Hashem. Al pi chassidus, there's nothing in the world that can exist even for a moment without Hashem sustaining it, without Hashem investing energy into it. So that means even Klippa has godly energy that sustains it and keeps it alive. And therefore, the question is, how could Klippa have godly energy? And that's a contradiction of terms. If it's Klippa, it's not godly. If it's godly, it's not Klippa. So there's two answers to the question, how does Klippa have chayas? Yes.
How do other people even think that there could be something that would be within God?
I guess it's a little bit the way people think about nature. Even people that believe in the Eibishter, and they don't understand this concept of every second is connected. So they believe the Eibishter created a system, which is nature, and then certain things happen because of the system that Hashem created. It's not something which is really totally disconnected from Him. He's the one who created the system. But if you would tell somebody, and again, not only somebody, but even great scholars have this opinion that a leaf that falls off the tree when it's windy is Ashgacha Pratis, that this leaf on this tree should fall down on this spot and should do 13 somersaults before it gets there. They'd laugh at you. In fact, I remember seeing somewhere where it says, whoever says that is a fool. I'm talking about a Torah source. And that's another discussion. One day we'll talk about it. If it's a Torah source, how can I say something like that? It must be that even according to the Torah, there's truth to it. How can there be two truths? So we'll put it on hold. When we'll get there, we'll explain it. But, so just like they think about that, I guess they also understand the same with Yetzer Hara. Klip, Hashem created an angel. Now this angel that's his shlichus, but that doesn't mean that everything he does in every second is connected to Hashem. But Al Chassidus, nothing can exist even for a second. It would become I am the epis if it wouldn't be sustained by Hashem. So therefore, there's a question: how does Hashem reach it? So there's two answers to the question, and one answer, which is the more common one, and that is through excessive tzimtzum, which we learned about before. That means that the light of Hashem, the light diminishes and diminishes and diminishes and becomes more hidden, more darker and darker and darker. And there's hardly anything sort of left of that light. And from that light, Klippa could nourish. Because if the light of Hashem is open, Klippa can't nourish. They would not be able to handle it because Kedusha is Kedusha and Klippa is Klippa. But because the light of Hashem is hidden, so therefore, according to Chassidus, even a treif piece of chazer, pork, which is absolutely treif. I meet people, I once definitely met someone who told me that they're not careful with kosher. The only thing they don't eat is pork. In other words, they know that this is something super unkosher. So even treif chazer has in it a nitzitz alaki, but we don't usually use the term nitzitz because the nitzitz alaki is so hidden, so buried, that it's like non-existent, and that's why if you eat it, even if you eat it l'shem shemayim, and you make we're learning in Tanya right now these program, you eat it l'shem shemayim, and you make a bracha before, you make a bracha after, and you have all the kavanas. There's no way you can elevate it. This would be equivalent to chas v'shalom, a person who is God forbid a vegetable. Physically, they're there, and the neshama is in their body, so halachically and medically is considered alive. But there's absolutely no other symptom of life in that way. And you can't do anything with this person. That's how you could do nothing with, that's why it's called Klippa. But not that there is no godliness there, because then it couldn't exist. So that means the Ur Elokei has to descend and descend and descend and go through excessive tzimtzum, then it goes into it, and that's how to keep it alive. The second explanation is what it's talking about over here, is the opposite. It comes from such a high place, and that's how it can keep it alive. Because the high place, which is makif is something which could relate to different things. First of all, it relates to things, it's believable, it's infinite, and therefore it connects to everything equally, and it's equal distance from everything. And second of all, it's makif means also that it doesn't really connect to whatever it is that it's giving it life. It's from the outside. And if it's from the outside, Therefore, it's not measured by the capacity of the recipient. These are not easy concepts to understand. I was just thinking of a mashal. Even in Kedusha, there's makiv and there's pneumius. Let's say a mashal, the Rebbe speaks. The Rebbe used to speak at a Fabrengen to all Chassidim. There was a time where he spoke to children by children rallies. There was a time that he spoke to a group of people who were supporters of Chabad, gave money, and these were people who were not regular Chassidim. These are people who had a connection to Chabad, friends of Chabad, but they had no concept of Chassidus or anything like that. And there was a time where they ever spoke to the women a few times a year before Rosh Hashanah and Chabei Shvat. So whenever the Rebbe spoke to a group, he spoke according to the group. When he spoke to children at a rally, he said things that needs to be spoken to children. When he spoke to people who are supporters, he spoke about things that are relevant to them and that they could relate to. When he spoke to women, he spoke to women about things that they relate to and they could understand and they could follow. And basically, that's called pneumius. Take, for example, when the Rebbe gave out a sefer, the Rebbe gave out a kuntras. He gave out to men, to women, to children. Was there any difference? Whoever walked by, it was all the same. Because giving a kuntras is relatively, but this is in Kedusha, it's makif. This is not being measured or designed according to each recipient, because it's not an union of Torah, it's not an union of seichel that you're understanding. So therefore, it's the same for everybody. So an infant got the same Tanya, for example, like the biggest chassid in the world. Why? Because it wasn't teaching the Tanya, it's giving the Tanya, that's makiv. And because it's makiv, everybody gets the same. So this is in Kedusha itself. But then if you go a step further, Kedusha and Klippa, if something is makiv, which means it's from a place of bleak, and therefore it can be absorbed internally. Its effect is only from the outside. From the outside, that's how Klippa can also get. So number one, they can get because it's from the outside. Number two, being that it's makif, it comes in abundance. That's the nakuda in this maimer. Two advantages that there is when it comes from makif. Yeah.
So similar to when we were learning the marmer on hair and like so when we cover the hair down here, like it's covered in the higher world because then it's like it's accessible to anything, even Cleveland.
No, over there talking about that if it would be uncovered, over there saying if you're talking about, remember you said that there could be hair from the Ein Sof and there could be hair from Malchus. So what I'm talking about is more the hair from Malchus. Malchus is already tzimtzum. Hair from Malchus is excessive tzimtzum. And if it's not covered, then it could give chayes to klipa. What he says about the other level, Ein Sof, is if that would be revealed, the worlds wouldn't be able to receive it. They would just be destroyed. Destroyed doesn't mean they would explode. Destroyed means they wouldn't be in the world the way we know it. It would be all godly. So that might be another question, which that question will be answered in the Maimer a little bit later. So sometimes we say if it would be Makiv, then it would give chayes to klipa. And sometimes we say the world wouldn't be able to handle it. Where's the difference? So we'll learn later that even in Makiv there are two possibilities. But anyway, I confess and make it clear that Makiv this subject is not an easy subject. And as we go along, there may be different analogies, different mishalim, that slowly it'll sink in a little bit better. Okay? What does number 11 mean? Neitlin chelik berosh. If someone would see these words, he would know immediately what it's referring to. They take a bigger portion. Who's the they?
Well, the nations when they
Actually not. If you remember, there was a parenthesis in the middle that he said a yid could also get from Makif if he does Averis. Not only they get from Makif, but they'll get even more because they get from Makif, because they are providing Klippa with so much chayas. So Klippa says, okay, I'll take care of you guys. I'll give you even more than regular. In other words, you see Chas v'Shalom a yid who's Mechal Shabbos, keeps the store open on Shabbos, and he's doing much better in business than the guy who's keeping Shabbos. Doesn't make any sense. The answer is he's getting from Makir. He's getting from Klippa.
I guess the Averas could get more from Makif than a Goy that does Averas, like, that's,
Yes.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because when a Yid does an Avera, because a Yid has Kedusha in him, and he does an Avera, the Kedusha is now going to the Klippa. So they're getting from me something that they couldn't get from anyone else. And therefore, they will, it's like I gave the example when I think we were learning this, the minor, and that Mitzvah. It's like when there's a country that's providing, let's say, the enemies, Hamas or Hezbollah, with weapons. That's the worst thing you can do. But those who give them weapons, they're going to give them a lot of benefits, whatever benefits they can give, because by you giving us weapons, we can do what we want to do. So Klippa gets the most sustenance when a Yid who has an Epishal Kiz doesn't have air. That's really when they get the strongest sustenance. So Negel Chelik Bresh means not only they get from Klippa, and that's why they can have what they have, but they even get more than the average person would get Chayes.
makes so much sense that there's so many, like, so successful Jews out there. In the world.
I would think that some of the most successful Jews in America, the biggest companies and the biggest people out there with money and things like that, are Yidden, but not from Yidden.
Right.
And that's why it's a big test. Okay, now we will go to No, we don't have questions, right? That's what we don't have the questions there. We just have a summary. So let's do the summary. What's the summary of all these dollars? Page 50. It appears from the mushal that there's something to gain from the ministers. Nevertheless, because in the mushal, there is something to gain. Like if you choose a minister, like we know with elections, if you're going to campaign for me, then when I get elected, I'm going to help you. So therefore, there's something to gain from choosing them. But the Pikach chooses the king because that's the right thing. How is this with Hashem? Because with Hashem, that doesn't apply. So it says the two things to gain by receiving from Klippa rather than Kedusha. There is what to gain when you get from Klippa. Number one, to receive from Kedusha, you must have Bittul. And number two, when you receive from Klippa, you get much more because it's Makif. And this is the wisdom of the Pikach, that although to receive from the king, Kedusha, requires labor, which is Bittul, and the Hashpah is limited, nevertheless, they forego that, and they choose the king because this is Kedusha. They want Kedusha, not Klippa. Okay, so now we'll go to Oizhei. Now that I've asked a deeper question. Page 212. The Mamar Beyom Ashtei Asar, Tavshin Lamed Aleph. Mamar that Rabbi said on Yud Aleph Nissen, and this is in the lessons in my Marim, page 212. The reason for the Pikach, we don't have to search, it says in the Medrash. Why does this wise person choose the king over the ministers if they get much more benefit from the ministers? The answer is because the ministers, they could be exchanged, which means they could be replaced. But the king is not replaced. Thank you. Okay. Remember, the Rebbe asked the question, what do you need that reason for? The king is better than the ministers. we can explain that what this means is as follows. Page 213, 213. Shashpo haba maluma is the hashpa that comes from klipa. But nevertheless, it's something temporary and doesn't really last. People ask if it says that every advantage that you have in Kedusha, you also have in Klippa, because Hashem created Kedusha and Klippa in a way that Klippa mirrors Kedusha. So there's Chochmah in Kedusha, there's Chochmah in Klippa. There's amazing music in Kedusha, there's amazing music in Klippa. There's money in Kedusha, there's money in Klippa. There's entertainment in Kedusha, there's entertainment in Klippa. So if that's the case, so what is the advantage of Kedusha over Klippa? If everything that's there is also there. And if you tell somebody, if you take Chayes from Klippa, you get so much more, but it's Klippa. And if you take from Kedusha, you'll get less. So you'll say, okay, who cares where it's from, as long as I have my $1,000 or 20,000 or 100,000. So there's a mashal that's given, that mashal brings it out a little bit. I don't remember if we spoke about it this year, but the famous mashal of a king, remind me if I spoke about it, I won't repeat it again. A king who said to four of his people who were builders, contractors, designers, and they said to them, I want you to build me another room for the palace, an extra room. I did speak about it, right? So you remember the mashal. The mashal was that the fourth guy, built what? A wall, which was a mirror. He came to hand out the money, and every wall he hung up a sack of money. And on his wall, he put nothing there. When the guy complained, he said, you have 3 sacks on your wall because the mirror mirrored all the other sacks. And what's the mashal? That he has more than everybody else, but he has nothing to go home with. He can't do anything with it. So that's what it's saying here. It's taka more than Kedusha, but it falls apart. So this is what he explains. Why is it? Because ultimately, when the time comes that all the sparks of Kedusha will be elevated, and the sparks of Kedusha will be extracted from Klippa, and they will return to their source in Kedusha. That's where they can derive vitality. That's where they get their nurture from Kedusha, from those sparks. Once the sparks are back to their source and return to Kedusha, Yizbatul Gamri, then they'll be gone, because it'll be just like if a neshama leaves the body, then the body is no longer alive. If what gives life to Klippa is the Nitzutz Alaki, and we end up elevating all the sparks, once all the sparks are extracted and they return to their source in Kedusha, then there's nothing that gives life to Klippa anymore. So their existence is temporary. Kosh came to the Gate Yisrael. Here again in the bracket, he again addresses, what about a Yid who does the same thing? Shagam Achshav, even now, the fact that a Yid can get chayas from Klippa is also just temporary. In fact, there's a mimer from the Rebbe Rashab, and this is probably, if I'm not mistaken, the first mimer that was ever translated in English by Rabbi Posner, I think it was, Zalman Posner. It's called Kuntres of Mayim. If you ever read it, it's long, but it's made up of many, many small maimarim. The main theme of the whole mimer is this Nakuda. Why is it that if a Yid would get chayes from Klippa and therefore would be extremely successful, but it's only temporary, ultimately it will fall apart? But here he just mentions it briefly. A Yid is not meant to get chayes from Klippa. So even if he gets chayes from Klippa, it'll only be temporary. Ultimately, it'll fall apart. Now, what does fall apart mean? Fall apart doesn't always mean what we think it means. Like the story that we spoke about, where a person said, "It's a miracle that I worked on Shabbos." because now someone in the family is sick and he has money to pay for all the doctor bills. Had he not worked on Shabbos, he wouldn't have had money to pay the doctor bills. So now he feels justified that he worked on Shabbos. But the truth is, the mistake he's making is had he not worked on Shabbos, he might have not needed doctor bills in the first place. So basically, what we're saying is that a yid who, for example, say, "Listen, I didn't keep Shabbos, and look, I'm making money. I have a business. My business didn't collapse. I didn't go bankrupt. In fact, it's growing." So you might have a bracha by the money going into your home, but there are other things in life that not everybody knows about, and those other areas of life, that's where Chas v'shalom, you can see that this thing is not bringing the person bracha. Yeah.
We're talking a lot about parnasa, but does like yid who's, or anyone who's like getting hashpah from klipa, does that hashpah come down also in other ways? Like, would that person need to be getting more bracha in, or I guess not bracha, but like more, receiving more in all areas, like not just money, but also like
Right, it could be
health
other
or-
areas. He could areas, family, his children. He has a honorable position. People give him honor because, or a position of authority in a community or in a country. People who are elected officials. So it's a very honorable position. But like I said, it might be in this area we don't see anything changing and they're succeeding. But there's another area, like in this story with the health, there's another area where they're unfortunately losing out.
So if you get hashpah from klipa, it could help you in any, like this goes to all areas of your life. Like,
Right.
it's anything.
Hashpah is hashpah. Everything needs hashpah. Any form of anything that goes on in my life needs godly energy. So if I get chayes from klipa, then that's where I'm getting my godly energy. Hashpah would be translated as sustenance. Or really, hashpah means a flow of life, of vitality, a flow of energy, and that can come in many forms, in many ways.
Here to accept that they get more money, like, hey, you guys can have money and be rich, but it's hard to accept that, like, they might also get like better health and like children, etc. Like that's, harder to see it in something.
That's true. But again, first of all, we don't always know what's going on in a person's life. That's number one. I remember once I gave a class on this subject, not here, it was in Manhattan. I used to give classes there once a week. And this woman, she was actually there the first time. And after class, she was talking to me. And she told me she has no relationship with her children. They don't get along, they don't talk to each other. She was divorced twice. This is what I heard from just what she was telling me. And then when it came to the subject, she said, listen, I don't keep Shabbos, I don't keep mitzvahs, but I'm an executive of this big company. So I don't see that by not keeping Torah, anything goes wrong. So the fact that she's divorced twice is not going wrong. She has no relation with her children, not going wrong. In other words, I think, unfortunately, the world is in such a state now that a lot of these things, this is normal. Everybody has something like that. So, first of all, people don't even realize that things that are happening is truly, it's going wrong. And second of all, you don't always know what's going on in a person's life. So it looks like they have blessing all over the place, but it's really not so clear. And sometimes it could also be that the person has a certain schus for some reason or other, that in spite of the fact that this is this, they're getting brachas from a different certain schus. Like it says by Avraham Avinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of Oig Melech HaBashan because he had a schus that he saved Avraham, or he came to tell Avraham to save Lot. So that means that even someone who is connected to Klippa could have schusim. So again, this is the reasoning. Number one, if it's Klippa, it's temporary. V'cheinu the Idar Gisa, page 215. The fact, what's the disadvantage of Kedusha? That it's not in abundance, it's measured, that now that it's measured, But ultimately, when the source of Makiv will be revealed, which is Bimis HaMakiv, Hashpa, Magdusha, Tia Beriba, Godly Yeser, Mariba, Shnishma, B'chitzenis HaMakiv, Hashar Gam Lashpia. Let me do one more line on page 16 and explain what I just said. If this is what you give to those that transgress your will, the Gemara tells a story with Rabbi Akiva. That Rabbi Akiva and the other Chachamim were traveling together, and they were coming close to the city of Rome, and they heard the noise of, a city. There's a lot of noise going on in the city. The city is alive. So they started to cry, and Rabbi Akiva smiled. So they asked him, "Why are you smiling?" So he said to them, "Why are you crying?" So they said, "How can we not cry? This Rome that destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and Rahman al all the things that they did, all the evil that they did, should have life, and they're, you see the abundance that's going on there. How could it not make us cry? Like, how could there be such a thing?" So he asked Rabbi Akiva, "Why are you smiling?" So he said these words: if God gives so much abundance of good to those who transgress his will, whichever reason will explain it, but they're getting so much good, how much more so is in store for those that do what Hashem wants. What does that mean? That we see, that when you get Chayis from Kedusha, it's limited, that's only now. When Mashiach comes, it'll be infinitely more than the abundance that they get from Klipa.
Didn't he also laugh when the fox remember the?
So it's a similar story with the fox, and both stories reflect the same thing. Reflect Rabbi Akiva's way of looking at things. The story with the fox is also that they were standing by the place of the Beis Hamikdash, and the spot where the Kodesh HaKadoshim is, they saw a fox, a few of them running in and out. So the Chachamim began to cry, and he began to smile. So they said to him, "Why are you smiling? How could you smile?" And he said, "Why are you crying?" So they said, "This place, which was so holy, that even if a Kohen Gadol walked in the wrong way, who knows what happened to him? And now it's so disgraced that even foxes are running around there." So he said to them, it brought a pasuk, that there's a pasuk, actually a prophecy that'll say it'll be destroyed, and there'll be foxes running there. And now we know, and this will lead us to the next prophecy, which is about Mashiach and rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash and so on. So generally speaking, Rabbi Akiva had this way of looking at things, that he saw the good in everything, and therefore they actually said to him, "Nichamtani, nichamtani, you console us." Anyway, so this is really the end. I thought it's later. It's in this. It's the answer to your question. And if you notice, it says that when Mashiach comes, we're also going to get from Makir, but we're going to get from Pnimis of Makir, which means that there's a way of getting from the infinite light, and that gives Chayis to Klipa. But then there's when Mashiach comes, it'll also be coming from the infinite light, but from the Pnimis of the infinite light, and that goes only to Kedusha, and that's going to be, in terms of quantity, that'll be infinitely more even than what they get from Makif right now. So therefore, a person makes a simple account that if I do an Aveira, I'll get from Makif, but that's going to be, and I'll get a lot, but that's going to be temporary. If I get from Kedusha, I'll get less, but it'll be permanent. And even the fact that it's less will also change in the future. I'll be getting a lot. So of course, it makes more sense to get from Kedusha than to get from Klipa. And that's what it means by saying that all the ministers, they are something that could be replaced. They're not permanent, but the king is permanent. So the Rebbe asks that it's very difficult to explain it that way. Why? Let's continue. Are you everybody following us? Right? 216. If this is what it means, it's not a sufficient explanation. Why? Based on this, that means when the smart person is choosing the king, and he's choosing because it's going to be better, that means he's doing the same thing like everybody else. He's choosing something that's better for him. And it's all about me. Why? Because the only difference between him and the other people that choose the ministers The ministers are just taking into account how it'll be now. And they say, now we're going to get more. And he's smarter, he's looking into the future. So therefore, both are really doing the same thing. They're thinking of where am I going to get more benefit, except he's smarter. He goes by the benefit that'll be in the future, not just the benefit that we get now. The only difference between him and those that choose the ministers, they just look at the current situation. And currently, we'll have more if I go to Klippa. And the smart person looks into the future. There's a famous quote from Pirkei Avos, which says, who is considered wise? Somebody who, now this is not Pirkei Avos. Pirkei Avos is a little bit different. This they bring down from Gemara Tamid. Someone who sees the future, which means a person, when he makes a decision whether I should do something or not do something, doesn't just judge by the benefits I have now, but they judge by how this will be on the long run. Because in fact, in most cases, things that are good on the long run, which mean permanently, are a little bit more difficult on the immediate level. And things that are on the immediate level are easier, but on the long run, there's not much left of it, they fall apart. So a smart person, whether it's in business, whether it's in other things, they look at what will be the permanent ongoing situation, and that's what they go by. So that means that the peacock is no different than the nations of the world. They choose that which is more beneficial for them, and he also chooses what's more beneficial, but he's smarter, and he goes by the future, not just by the current. But so what's wrong? Maybe that's what it's all about. But the Rebbe says, no, it doesn't look like that's not what's motivating him to make that choice. Page 217. Where do we see otherwise? Obviously, there are people who could be thinking that, but the Medrash says is based on the pasuk Chelki Avaya Omra Nafshi. My portion is Hashem. That's the reason. Muchach, from this, it seems to be clear. The fact that the smart person chooses the king is not because of the benefit that he will derive, because I choose the king because he's the king. I know this means the fact that you didn't choose Hashem, even though now it's those who violate Hashem's will that see this abundance of hashpah. Not because they say, oh well, in the future I'll be getting more. Because this is Hashem. This is truly what Hashem wants. And the hashpah that goes to the klipa is not truly what Hashem wants. In other words, because it says Chelki Havaya Omra Nafshi, means my soul chooses Hashem because my soul wants Hashem. Not because of the benefits that I'm going to get, but because this is really truly Hashem. This is the essence of Hashem. What does it mean? Is the essence of Hashem? So he says that we get from the pnimius, and those who get because they violate Hashem will they get it like someone throws something over his shoulder to an enemy that you give it not willingly. No, Pnimis Hamakiv, we get now from Pnimis Hamakiv also, but that's not revealed to us. Mashiach comes, that fact that ultimately we get from Pnimis Hamakiv will be revealed. And how would that be revealed? By the fact that we'll be getting abundance of all those brachas that we didn't get now in abundance. But we are getting chayis from Pnimius, they get chayis from Makiv. And then the question is, oh, so they're getting chayis something higher than us. The answer is no, but we're getting from Pnimius of Makiv. The Pnimius of Makiv is being channeled through the Pnimius. We'll get there. So it says in Tanya, this is brought down also in Tanya and many Maimorim, the mashal, what does it mean that those who violate Hashem's will, they get it from Hashem's throwing over his back. It means Hashem gives it not willingly. Uses the mashal that if you give something to someone, not because you want to give it to them, you're reluctant to do it, but for some reason or other, you have no choice, you have to. Let's say it's an issue of money, this belongs to me, this belongs to you, and I believe for sure belongs to me, and then we go to a judge who rules, the Rav rules, you have to give him $1,000. I give it to him, I can't even look him in the face, because I believe that it's really mine. So I give it to him, and it's as if you just, okay, here, take it. That's called Shadna Basa Kasva. You're doing it unwillingly. So no one could force Hashem to do anything, but it's a mashal. It means Hashem gives it, but his desire is not to give them chayes, but he's giving them chayes as a means to an end for something else. We need more time to explain this, so we'll stop off over here on page 218. And then we'll do the Sikha on the Sheikh Abula. Take 2 or 3 minutes. And then we'll do Sheikh Abula.